Okay, so Paul is just finishing up a great launch and he had a question for me, which is what happens now? Is the next launch going to be as good as this one? What do I expect? And the answer is no, probably won't. Paul has built up to this point, and this is his first launch where he actually knew what he was doing because he's in my mentorship. He can't reasonably expect the next launch to perform as well as this one because there just isn't as much time in between. So, what do you do in between to make sure that the next one and that momentum stays as high? Well, that's what this mentorship hot seat call is about. I hope that you really enjoy it. This is a really important one, whether you've done a launch or not done a launch, because it gets into not just converting people to become clients, but how to talk to people who maybe didn't convert to become a client that you've already spoken to and maintain a relationship with them. In addition to ongoing marketing, in addition to dealing with the inevitable ebb and flow in the business. Hope that you enjoy this. I'll be back at the end to recommend another episode for you. Paul, let's go to you. Why don't you ask your question again?
Sure. Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
I just actually still in the process of finishing the tail of my launch. Launch week was last week. It went really well. Um, uh, well over what my uh, sort of goal was, so which is cool. And still have a lot of stuff to catch up on. So I have more enrollment calls I haven't even gotten to yet, and prospects
Cool.
I haven't been booked calls with. So a longer tail than I anticipated. So really good. I get that these folks were probably the lowest hanging fruit of prospects that are out there. So it was easier to kind of, harvest this crop than
Sure.
next.
Yeah.
But, I was listening to Melissa's podcast or the one that you shared, which was super encouraging. And she just kind of built this cadence of every other month. And so I was, wondering, is that how replicatable is this
Yeah.
experience from the first time?
You hit the nail on the head. Where I mean, it's first book syndrome for authors, right? You spend 18 years, you spend 20 years thinking about your first book, and then you write it and it becomes a success, and then you spend a year and a half doing your next one, and you can't expect it to be as good. You have to become a learner. You have to experience a lot more in between. And what great authors do is they just get better and better at learning quicker and gaining more interesting experiences faster after they come out with their first book in order to write more. Or they're like Michael Lewis and they wait 12 years before the next book, but you don't really have that option. The first launch, you are absolute the first launch, if you've never really done any like systematized marketing before and any kind of a halfway decent sales process, is always going to outperform your next one. I think you can reasonably expect the second one to not go as well as the first. But what you need to do now is you need to take what you learned and continue to generate new blood. But also, there's a lot of people that were interested in your first launch that weren't quite ready yet. And so the big mistake that a lot of people make is that they have a launch, they convert the people into clients that they convert into clients, and then they completely ignore anybody else they were speaking to. The folks that you had some conversations with, working backwards from like, hey, we had calls and they decided no, or we had conversations and it didn't make it to the call, in terms of priority 1, 2, keep up with every few weeks, right? Hey, was just thinking about you. Was just thinking about that thing that you said on our call a couple weeks back. I'd love to send you this. That will ensure that you don't lose as much momentum as you would otherwise lose while you're generating new interest and new blood, because you can't I mean, you've been building up, largely unconsciously in a lot of cases, you've been building up an audience for years. You've been building up interest, trust for years. You can't reasonably expect that in the month or two in between launches you're going to be able to generate that same amount of trust and relationship. And so you have to capture more of what you were doing beforehand as you get better and better. I mean, your systems for selling and marketing, yeah, are great, but your systems of OTM for generating interest as well are also much better. But it takes a little bit more time for those to kick in.
Cool. Thank you, John.
You got it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you got a lot out of that. I heard from Paul afterwards that he definitely got a lot out of that. And his numbers for his first launch were phenomenal, more money than he's ever made. Awesome. But of course, he's got to keep it up, right? And so I hope that that helps and will, of course, help him continue in the mentorship to make sure that he stays crushing it. Now, that was a hot seat for my high-end mentorship. If you're looking to scale your own online fitness business, please on Instagram send me a DM that just says mentor. I'm at It's Coach Goodman. In the meantime, if you're looking for another episode to listen to, I'm going to recommend you check out episode 106. The title of that is 2,500 followers, but a sale, not one. This is an episode that's going to help you if you're not getting sales through social media. And just so you know, the solution is not more followers. There's two big reasons why you're not getting sales. We get into that on the episode, so check it out, episode 106. It's called 2,500 followers, but a sale, not one. Hope that you enjoy it. Thanks for listening.